This tutorial is about configurations. The configuration defines the basic behavior of your payment system and the default information we use to describe a user. Configurations are structured in a hierarchical way. That means, you have parent and child configurations. Child configurations inherit the settings of its parent. So you are advised to arrange as much as possible, high in the hierarchy. If you are not logged in already, log in as a network or global administrator, and go to System. Select Configurations in the side menu. Our basic network has only one configuration, the default configuration. It is created by the wizard when we created our basic network. But in fact, it is a child of the global system configuration. It inherits all its settings. The URL of the network is determined by your installation. For example, www.example.com. But as we use a local implementation in this tutorial, the URL refers to the local host, using port 1234. In our basic network, we want to create separate configurations for region A and B. So, let's create a child configuration for region A, by pressing New. Give it a name, an internal name and description. We don't want to change the main URL for now. This can be done in the future. For example, if you register a new domain name like www.regiona.com, you can have it point to this configuration. But instead, we will use region A as a path. The first section of the configuration is about user data. The settings you see are inherited from the default configuration, but we can change them by clicking on the pencil icon on the right. Let's click on the pencil icon of the first setting, Privacy Controlled Profile Fields. This setting enables the user to choose whether or not a profile field is visible for other users. Let's open the drop-down and tick the box before marital status. The icon has changed in a cross sign and a padlock. The cross sign tells us that this setting is not inherited anymore. The open padlock allows this setting to be changed when inherited by a child configuration. When we click the padlock, it closes. Now it cannot be changed anymore when inherited by a child configuration. It is best practice to change settings as high up in the hierarchy as possible. So, if you want this specific setting to apply to users of region A and B, you best undo the changes and apply them one level up, to the default configuration. The next settings are about the user mail address and how it is validated, whether or not a profile picture is needed at registration, and the login name. We'll leave them unchanged. The next section is about localization. The first setting is the default language. If region A would for example be a Spanish-spoken region, you can select Spanish as the default language. The next field describes the allowed languages. These are inherited from the global configuration. So if you want to allow other languages, they have to be added to the global configuration. The next settings of this section are about number format, distance unit, date and time format, the list separator and local time zone. In our case they are okay, so let's go on. The next section is about the address information of the user. You can define what information fields are enabled and whether they are required at registration. Scrolling down, we get to the section Phones. You can define what kind of information you want and if the user may change the privacy setting. The Display section defines a lot information related to display of information of the payment system, users and results of search operations. At the end there are a few fields worth explaining. The first one is labeled Redirect Login to URL. When your payment system is accessed from within another site, for example WordPress, the URL of that front end needs to be set here. The next field is labeled URL to redirect after logout. This does the opposite. After logoff, you will return to the URL you specify. The integration of Cyclos with WordPress is covered in another tutorial. The next section is define setting for the new frontend that is being developed. We will skip this section as we focus on the classic frontend. Let's have a look at the section Mobile Application. You can define when and how the user map will show, if you'll want to enable QR scanning and Bluetooth printing. Let's leave these settings as they are. We reached the section Maps and Directory. Here we can define whether we want to show a user map using Google Maps, how many users we want to show, the default location and zoom level. But we leave this for a future amendment. Next, we come to the emails section. Cyclos can send an emails, for example, every time a payment is done. In this section you configure the mail server and the credentials you want to use. In our case we will use the same settings for both region A and B. So, we better configure this later, in the default network configuration. We still have a few sections to go. Cyclos is able to send SMS messages. But we will not enable this. Next, we come to restrictions. The first setting labeled Allow Access defines from which URL a group or groups set with this configuration may be accessed. It is good practice to define a special configuration with a difficult-to-guess URL, and assign that configuration to the administrator group. This way, administrators can only log on from that URL. In the configuration we are creating now, we leave it as it is. So users can log in from the main URL example.com and the URL with path example.com/region A. The rest of the settings are self-explanatory. The next two sections, alerts and notifications, we will skip. The section labeled as CAPTCHA gives us the possibility to enhance security at registration and dealing with lost passwords. We will leave it at default. The next section is labeled Data Visible to Guests. Here we are going to change some settings. The first 5 settings will leave unchanged. Search engines are allowed to index the page and we do not allow guests to search for users and have a look at their profile fields. Just a matter of privacy. We want visitors to the URL path we defined, to be able registering as a silver or gold member for region A only. So, go to the setting labeled as Possible Groups for Public Registration. This is the setting we changed in the tutorial about users and registration, remember. We will overrule the setting, so click on the pencil and untick the boxes of region B. The next settings are about using the default registration form or using a wizard. We did not create a wizard, so leave these settings as they are. The rest of the settings we want to be the same for region A and region B. So we are almost ready. Notice the field labeled Visible Advertisement Groups? We also need to change that. Because we want all advertisement to be visible. But we best do that in the parent configuration. Now press Save and go to the default configuration. Scroll down to the email section. Here you can enter your credentials of the SMTP server. Scroll down to the Data Visible to Guests section until you reach the field Forgotten Password Retrieval. Here we click on the pencil and select Enabled with Security Question. This allows the user to reset his forgotten password after answering a security question. Scroll down towards Visible Advertisement Groups. There is only one option selected, the A Silver Member Group. The wizard did that when we created the network. But we want all advertisements of region A and B to be visible. So tick the other boxes. Don't forget to press Save. Now, there is only one final thing we have to do. We need to assign the configuration to the group set of region A. So, select Groups in the left side menu, and select the group set of region A. Open the tab Configuration. Select the configuration called Region A, and press Apply. That's it. We can use the same procedure for creating a configuration for Region B.